Hey folks, Quill18 here, and welcome to a video to talk about the 1.1 patch for BattleTech. This is currently in public beta testing. You can sign up or join up or jump on the bandwagon or whatever you call it for the beta patch by going to Steam, right-clicking on BattleTech, going to Properties, and then going to the Betas tab. There'll be a pull-down menu there to let you choose the public beta for patch 1.1. We're going to read the patch notes in just a moment. There's a lot of changes to it, but one of the things I wanted to highlight right away is when you do start a new campaign on 1.1 over here, you get this new custom campaign option over here. Now, there's plenty of people who find vanilla BattleTech quite difficult, but if you do have experience with strategy games or BattleTech or things like that, the vanilla game of BattleTech is not the hardest thing in the universe. Now, there are plenty of mods out there to save the day, to up the difficulty level, and a lot of the features from some of those mods have been rolled into this new built into the game difficulty setting for campaign. One thing that actually mods couldn't do, as far as I know, is enable an Ironman mode. So in Ironman, you don't get to save your own game or reload your own game. There is only ever one save file. It automatically updates itself. So if you go and you discover that you're in a battle and all of a sudden, oh, your favorite mech just got shot through, the head, critical hit, your mech warrior died, and your mech is going to be left as scrap on the battlefield. Too bad. No takesies backsies. That is like, you just get locked in over there, which is kind of crazy. This is, so these settings can only be modified at the game start. Some of these others can be tweaked, I think, through a game menu, just like an option screen while you're running. Unequipped mechs, really like this. I've done a couple of videos showcasing some mod packs that introduce a mod in particular that makes it so that when you rebuild a mech from salvage, when you get all the parts for a mech and you rebuild it from salvage, it made it like normally in vanilla, you get a brand new, perfectly shiny mech with all the weapons intact and so on and so forth. If you turn this option on, you're going to get a mech and it's going to be all intact and, won't need repairs, but it won't have any weapons. You just have an empty chassis. So you're going to have to equip it using your own salvage or weapons that you have bought, which I think is great. Another popular patch or mod changed the number of parts you needed to assemble a mech from 3 to 5. So it takes a lot longer for you to assemble new mechs. It really changes the pace of the game substantially. You can even go to 8, and to me that's like, okay, at that point you're not talking about making the game harder, you're just talking about making the game way slower. But it turns out 5's a pretty good number to still make it so that you feel like you're getting mechs fairly regularly, but it's not for free all the time. And between these two, you're going to get mechs a little slower, and they're not going to come with a bunch of free weapons, so, you're really going to have to watch out for it. Then there's some options here to increase the enemy force strength here, just to make the enemy a little tougher. This is another scary one over here. Mech Destruction. When active, this setting will cause any mech disabled by the destruction of its center torso to be lost permanently. Now, it's not entirely clear here. I assume that you still get a point of salvage from destroying a mech by blowing up its center torso, because otherwise that would be a little nuts. But I believe what this more or less directly impacts is when for your own mechs that you lost in battle, you didn't really lose the mech. It just came back to your workshop heavily damaged. But now, if you lose a mech through its center torso damage, you would lose your mech. Maybe still get a piece of salvage. I hope that's how it is, because, again, there was a popular mod that enabled this mechanic in there, and that's the way it treated it. If you lost one of your mechs through critical damage to the center torso, then it was actually a customizable chance to lose it completely, but by default, I think you'd had it on, and you'd get maybe one piece of salvage back for your busted up mech. Very sad. You can tune the amount of salvage you get up or down over here, which, did we feel like we got too much salvage? You don't get any more. It's not like you get to choose more after each battle. So, I don't know. Setting does not apply to campaign story missions. Okay, that's good. A lot of those have fixed salvage that were really important, so fair enough. Increased lethality meter over here. So, in battle, when your mech warriors were incapacitated, either because their mech was destroyed or they maxed out on all their injuries or something like that, the way I believe it worked is there was a chance that they might die, but there was also a chance that you found them again after the battle and were able to patch them up. They'd be heavily injured and they would have to take months off to repair or to heal, but you'd get them back. If you turn this on, this will make it so that the mech warriors are always killed in combat. While this clearly increases the difficulty, to me it's like, no, I kind of like the idea that, like, oh, did they survive or didn't they? It's extra tension, and sure, why not? Just because, someone was completely knocked unconscious mid-battle doesn't necessarily mean they should be dead. I mean, you know, if someone gets shot in the head of their mech, then yeah. But the danger, so the thing with this is it's really going to encourage you to punch out more, to do the eject on a mech once you're, you know, if you've got, you know, even if you got extra hit points, right? You can take, you can take a total of 4 injuries, but you're at 3. Maybe you want to hit the eject button and preserve that experience on a valuable mech warrior over here. So something to do there. Advanced mech warriors. So this affects how often more skilled warriors show up in the hiring hall, which apparently goes up as the game goes on anyway. So you can tune this up or down depending on what you want. I don't know if this has much of an impact. That was never something that really mattered to me. But on the other hand, with this new lethality setting, it probably matters a lot more because you will be losing pilots. You know, if you're playing Ironman with lethality on, then like if you lower the amount of times you get advanced mech warriors, that'll really hurt to replenish your forces. You can tune the contract payment up or down. Mech warrior progress slow. I believe this is just their experience point rates. Controls the amount of experience they get after each mission. Yeah, so they'll level up slower. And then finally, no rare salvage. So it removes the like sort of plus and plus plus items to be found in salvage after a battle. So they can only be purchased at that point. Interesting. I mean, it's there. I'm sure people were talking about it in the forums of things. I don't know if I particularly care about this either way. I think with the when you get rare salvage after a battle, I think it makes it really interesting. It gives you makes you have a more important choice of, do I take another mech part, especially now that I need freaking 5 to assemble a mech maybe, or do I take that, you know, medium laser plus or something? What's more valuable? And then all of a sudden you get a tough and interesting decision. So I don't know if I'd turn this on for my own game in terms of maximizing fun, but it would certainly increase the difficulty. So that's quite cool. I'm going to go ahead and I have just the start of a fresh campaign. I'm going to load that in the background while we flip over to... Oh, of course. This is now locked, so it's not letting me actually tab to the other window. Come on. I hate when programs do that. They're like, no. I must have full control of the monitor and not let you tab out. All right, there we go. So we've got the patch notes over here for 1.1. I'll try to remember to include a link to this in doobly-doo, and that'll give you the instructions for how to turn on the beta as well, whether you're on Steam or through GOG. Okay, new features. So first of all, Mech Warrior customization over here. So you can customize the appearance, call sign, name, pronoun, and voice of all non-Ronin mech warriors. So that was the thing, right? Your other mechs in your mech company, your merc company over here, a lot of people wanted to be able to rename them, including myself. So you can now do that. However, the starting mech warriors, the 4 that you get at the start, are considered Ronin, so you can't tune them. It's only the new ones that you hire, basically, you can tweak. All right, fair enough. The granular difficulty settings is what we talked about over here. And then new custom campaign mode, which has the other 3 difficulty settings that you have to turn on at the start. Here's another big one. You can accelerate the current action with the space bar. So all the animations and stuff in battle, which, you know, take a fair amount of time to show, well, you can accelerate all that by holding down the space bar. In addition to that, there's a speed up mode to accelerate all combat options in the gameplay settings. So if we flip back over here and we go into settings, you can see, actually, go back. This is an Ironman campaign, so you can see no loading, no saving over here. So in the settings right here, speed up single player over here means it's the same as holding down spacebar all the time. So if you turn this on, as far as I know, you don't have to go and hold the spacebar, and things do happen very quickly. The one exception is that it will not fast forward through story dialogue. Yeah, while story dialogue is playing during campaign missions, it will not speed up. So sometimes it'll be like, so it'll be playing something at normal speed, and as soon as people stop talking, then it'll zip through the rest. And it is very zippy, very fast. General combat speed optimizations, huge, to decrease turn times even when not using the new speed up options. In addition, the settings for combat result, pauses, and camera transition times have been exposed in the combat game constants.json for easier modding. So it's going to be easier for other mods to continuously tweak more of the cool camera effects, maybe, you know, make them faster, slower, more interesting in a variety of different ways, and generally speaking, keep the combat sped up a little bit, which I like. Cancel combat actions and selections with right click. So right clicking in combat without holding the button down now acts like the escape key, backing out of the current action or selection. That's fine. To me, my reflex will probably always hit escape, but maybe some people prefer that. Sure, doesn't hurt. Okay, this is another one that I like a lot. Mech Lab quality of life improvements. This is where you're building and redesigning your mechs. Includes a shortcut button is now available to bring up the store directly from the Mech Lab. So let's go ahead and actually bring that up. If I were to exit out of here, go to the Mech Bay. Yeah, they say Mech Lab, but it's the Mech Bay. I see what they're going for. And let's say I try to modify my blackjack over here. There's a check store button over here. So if I check store, I get it. And I do feel like bopping around the menus in here is faster. I mean, it may have to do with the fact that I did purge my save game list and things like that, but I've done that before, and I don't think it sped up the UI as much as it did. So we got the shop here, and we can exit out of here, and we're still in the Mech Lab, which I think is fantastic. The running total CBIL cost of work order is now displayed while the player is working in the Mech Lab, because that's something you used to only get the result of afterwards. Where does it show up? So, oh, right here, work cost. So if I start making changes, we start getting information about the cost and how many days it'll take to make these modifications right over here. You don't have to hit confirm and check that. To me, that's not critical, because you didn't normally... Like, I guess if there was a mass repair and you weren't that wealthy, then maybe you'd find out and, like, avoid some other clicking a little sooner, but I'm not sure it makes much of a difference. This is a huge one that I had a mod that did this for me, and it's so happy they added this in vanilla. Added tooltips for all mech rating bars in the Mech Bay and Mech Lab that show and explain more of the specific numbers behind that rating. So... there was always the issue with movement over here, for example. You'd mouse over it, and it would tell you, this gives you an idea about your ground speed and jump speed. Like, okay, but how much of it is jump speed versus ground speed? What is my ground speed relative to another mech? Well, now when you mouse over this, it actually gives you the numbers of your maximum movement speed, your maximum sprint distance, and your jump distance over here. And you can get that information from this screen as well, which is handy when you're maybe trying to organize a team to find out, like, if they work well together, you know, how fast are various things here. The Shadowhawk is listed as faster. Is it because it can jump faster or further, or is it because it can move faster? In this case, it can move faster, which is great to know. Now, that's pretty okay. And you get firepower, which is kind of spiffy as well. Maximum damage, 82. Maximum stability damage is 15. So again, you can sort of compare and contrast where things are. But here's the one that I always felt is the most important. If I go back to the blackjack in particular, is heat efficiency. This is one of my favorite things in one of the mods to add this breakdown. So you actually get a number, because you could calculate this yourself. How much heat you were sinking every turn, how much heat all your weapons were doing, da-da-da-da-da. But you want to be able to see it. So here you can see that we sink 45 heat every turn. Our Alpha Strike, if we fire every weapon on this blackjack, generates 52 heat. So we'd actually generate a net of 7 heat every turn if we were just firing nonstop. Plus, if we do a jump, we generate 8 heat from that as well. So you can start to get some ideas as to, do I want more heat sinks, or maybe I'm way good on heat efficiency. This Shadowhawk, for example, look at this over here. So it sinks 36 heat per turn and has an Alpha Strike of 30. So even if it fires every single weapon, it will burn off heat. In fact, it's perfectly balanced so that it can jump and fire every weapon every round and sink heat. And maybe you don't need that, especially since we are packing, say, LRMs on this one. You know, we may not be able to fire our SRMs and LRMs in the same round, period, just because they operate on wildly different range bands. So with this, it's probably okay to rip out a little bit of heat sinks and replace them maybe with some, you know, something else in some way, maybe just more armor or maybe even another weapon or something like that, because you might be okay with generating more net generation of heat during an Alpha Strike, because it might not be viable for you to actually Alpha Strike on this particular mech design over here. So anyway, I think that information is really good. We've got some other breakdowns for various things. Melee, base melee, chassis quirk over here, because different mechs have different... The base damage, I think, is based mostly on the weight of your mech. It's not tonnage directly, but it's not... I mean, I don't think it's a one-to-one with the tonnage. Or is it? Because it's 55 tons and it said base is 55. Yeah, okay. So it's exactly based on the base tonnage, and then there's some modifiers. Like the Spider here doesn't have a chassis quirk, so it only does the 30. Whereas the Shadowhawk probably has, like, a battle fist or something like that, so it gets the extra 30 in there, so it can actually punch quite hard. In the tabletop game, it does work that way. Your punching and kicking is your tonnage divided by something. It's not a direct number, but yeah. Okay, so those I love. Improved warning communications and tooltips in Mech Labs. Hey, it sounds good. Add a scrap button to the Mech Bay storage screen to allow scrapping complete mech chassis directly from storage. That's nice, because previously, if you had a mech in your storage over here and you wanted to scrap it, you had to go and, like, pay to bring it live in your bay and then scrap it. So now you can scrap directly from storage, which I think is very valuable. Gear components now display their stat benefit directly on the component UI instead of only on their tooltip. Sure, excellent, fine. Current inventory count in store and salvage. This is a big one. Item tooltips in the store and salvage screens now display how many of that item the player currently has in inventory. So if we do pop over to the store, and hopefully, yeah, there we go. We've got counts over here. So, or no, that's how many the store has. So, okay, if we wanted to sell something. So I have 3 AC2s. But we could get that before. So if I go to weapons and I just filter down, this way. One of my favorite mods, what it did is it changed it so that this clicking here wasn't a toggle for categories. Instead, it just selected. So clicking on the laser would be the same as doing this. And then clicking back on the weapon here would be the same as doing this. So AC2... Is it actually telling me how much I've got here? I mean, it's telling me on the sell screen, but I think it already did that. Because this is something that I would want to do sometimes, is like, should I buy this weapon? Do I already have it? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm misreading that, or maybe there's something else missing. Item, oh, tooltips! Hold on. Give me a tooltip. I'm not seeing a tooltip. Item tooltips in the store and salvage screens now display how many of the items the player currently has in his inventory. Okay, well, we'll leave that be for now. Several new events and improvements to event generation. Woo! Ultra-wide monitor support, sure. BattleTech launchers exited beta. Can be used to convert options before launching the game. Hey, borderless windowed mode. That's nice, because I don't think we've got that right here. So we'll take a look at that after. Performance and compatibility. Improvements to the game's start flow. Splash screens can now be skipped, although they have a note somewhere. I don't think it's in the patch notes. I think it was in the description at the top that they don't yet have the option to skip the sort of tutorial and intro mission. So that would be nice to have. There is a mod that does that. It starts you off basically right where I am over here. So where I am in this situation is immediately after the first quote-unquote kind of mercenary contract, where, you know, the one where you get like betrayed and have to blow up some more turrets and things like that, and then you come to the leopard for the first time and you get this setup here. There is a mod to let you skip directly to that, and hopefully at some point soon the base game will have that. Actually, there's a mod that lets you skip right to having the Argo as well, and part of having like Rogue Tech lets you do that, but mostly just skipping the initial tutorial mission would be the handiest, because it does take a few minutes to get through. Okay, visual settings have been tweaked slightly, so for things, so there's now an ultra setting, and the high setting now no longer includes a few things. Improved performance and stability of front-end list interfaces. That's great. That's probably one of the things that was slowing down the menuing UI a lot. Significantly improved the speed at which save games are refreshed. Hooray! Improved stability when alt-tabbing. Sure. Protection against spam flicking. Okay. Combat UI rendering optimization should reduce instances of small hitches during combat. I don't know if I was really aware of that, but sure, it sounds good. More computation. So these little performances, audio performance, terrain rendering, VFX, and all that. My biggest question about performance was mostly just the performance of menuing around in here. And maybe once we get back to the Argo, maybe I'll still find it's like not quite that sharp and quick, but this seems pretty fast. Maybe on the Leo it always was, and I didn't remember, but I don't know. Okay, tons of game balances have now been tweaked. I'm not going to go through this, but a few big ones are massive. In particular, all mechs heavier than light now have more stability. So mechs have sort of stability hit points, which was 100. Light mechs still have 100, but the heavier mechs have more and more and more. So it becomes very difficult. It becomes twice as hard for you to topple over an assault mech, which is good, because one of the big metas in the game was, but you just, like a lot of missiles, you know, you could do like a bunch of LRM boats, or some people were like spamming SRMs and medium lasers, and you would just like constantly knock over mechs, and then you would just pew out their legs or their torso bits to cause injuries, and it'd be easier to salvage and yada yada yada. So now the heavier mechs are a lot harder to tip over because they have more inertia, I suppose. They do also recover their stability a little bit faster, but that just means they can refill their bar to the max not as slow as if they were only recovering at a 1.0. Although it is worth noting that they from a relative point of view, they would go from like 0% stability to full stability a little slower than before, but from an absolute point of view, they're gaining a lot more stability. So I think that's fine. Light mechs are slightly harder to hit though. So light mechs already had an innate bonus defense to being hit. Now it's a little bit more. A bunch of weapons are now generating less heat over here. That includes like a slight tweak to the LRMs, which I think is fine because most of the LRMs and SRMs are actually being nerfed by the stability change. So them generating a little less heat is okay. But if you take a look at like the large lasers here, went from 30 to 18. Crazy. In fact, a lot of the lasers went down. Medium lasers went up, actually, because, again, medium laser boats were very much one of the meta things where you just spam a bunch of those, and that would be the best move. So, you know, just mixing it up. I love the fact that, like, big old guns are now going to be a little bit stronger, which is fun. So we got some UI changes over here. Not much that's necessarily worth reading out, I think. But there it is, improvements to AIs, especially on certain specific missions. You know, performance optimizations sounds all good. Multiplayer stuff, I didn't really do any of that. Multiplayer UI lobby, sure, all sounds good. And then a bunch of bug fixes that are listed here, which again, I won't read out loud. But definitely some major quality of life improvements, both in terms of the new game settings, the new tooltip stuff, the speed up modes, and then just general performance optimizations, and then some interesting tweaks to game balance. I think it's definitely the right kind of thing. Love to see this kind of, listening to the community and making some changes in response to that. And again, I think they've got a note specifically somewhere. One thing that didn't make it into 1.1 is the tutorial skip feature, but it's on their roadmap, so they do want to put that in, which is good. Hopefully, the 1.1 will go fully live soon. Hopefully, they won't find any game-breaking bugs in the patch, but that's why they do the open beta. That's something that that Paradox really likes to do, and obviously, this is published by Paradox, not developed by Paradox. It's developed by Harebrained Schemes, but I think there's going to be a lot of like buying into that sort of idea of like, hey, let's when there's a patch, let's put out a public beta first, make sure that there's no crazy stuff going on in there. It lets us get feedback on the changes. That's one of the things they'll do sometimes. They'll put this patch out and they'll get feedback on like some of the balance changes, and then maybe when the real patch comes out, some of the things are tweaked harder or tweaked not as hard, that sort of thing. So that's going to be good. And of course, Paradox did buy out Harebrained Schemes recently, but Paradox does like to have like these sub companies really continue to act independently. Even within Paradox, I think one of the things that makes them so strong at developing games is their teams are very self-contained and individualized. You know, like the EU4 team is going to be like, I don't know, a dozen people, and they just work on that. And it's a completely separate team from the CK2 team, which are all these small, really dedicated teams to things. So I think we'll keep seeing that sort of thing. And mostly I'm waited with bated breath here for the announcement of the first like content patch / expansion from BattleTech, because I just want more BattleTech. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll see you guys next time.